Hello and welcome back to Aubrey Books and Coffee. Please grab your favorite beverage of choice and join me. We are at the end of March. Can you believe it? Already the end of March. And I had such a great month. I hope you did too. I will say this is the highest number of DNFs though that I've done this month. That being said, like the title suggests, 35 books total to include those DNFs. And it was just, so much reading happening, mostly because of Realmathon, which was so fun, which was put on by Covers with Cassidy. I talked about it in my TBR game video, so feel free to go look at that to get more information and see the links and everything. It was so much fun, read so many good things. So let's go ahead and start by talking about some stats, shall we? Starting off, again, total of 35 books, and that equaled 9,589 pages read. There were several different star ratings, so let's go ahead and do that. There were 2 stars, sadly, 14 3 stars, 4 stars. And I forgot that in my little spreadsheet, I do little half stars when normally I don't give half stars. That way it gives me an accurate overall average rating. And so there were a couple little half stars in there too. But 3 5 stars and 8 that I DNF'd. Can you believe that? 8. So that gave me an average rating of 3.4 with, like I said, those 8 DNFs. So again, my little spreadsheet there doesn't look so great with what I'm trying to say out loud. Just trust me. That's how the ratings went for the month. The most used genre, of course, was fantasy. That shouldn't surprise anybody. Obviously, audiobooks were the highest for me. I did read a couple physical, though. Mostly manga or trade paperback. And I did read some ebooks also. And my biggest borrowing was from Libby with a really close following of Hoopla. It goes back and forth each month on which one I end up using the most, but always the library. You save me thousands of dollars and I cannot thank you enough, which is why I have dedicated a whole vlog to it that I do every month. So make sure you check that out as well. I'll make sure to leave links and stuff below. My shortest book for the month was Rogue Protocol, which was 152 pages. And my longest book of the month, of course, was Dragonbone Chair at 635 pages. So it was a bit of a beast. And it was also for a vlog, so make sure you check that one out. Going through my TBR, I actually did finally finish Assistant to the Villain. I gave it 4 stars. It was so much fun. Oh my gosh, I highly, highly recommend this. I've not read the sequel yet, but I will be. It is on my list because this was so much fun. I love the main character. She was snarky. She was sarcastic. She knew her worth and never backed down. And even the villain, even though he was confused like so many guys are when they're around us, let's be real, he was so much fun, and I enjoyed his personality as well. And he was a hero or anti-hero I could actually totally root for. Then I ended up DNFing my first DNF of Splintered. I am so sorry, you guys. I know. You're going to hate me. This is a beloved series, like an Alice in Wonderland retelling, and I get that, but I am in the minority with this, and I'm okay with that. I was not vibing with the characters at all. I didn't really care much for the mental health rep that was being done and how it was handled, but I don't expect every author to be an expert in it, of course, because I'm not either, but it was a little annoying. And on top of it, I just really, really hated that male lead. Like, I hate him with a passion. I think he's the worst. And so I'm like, I just can't. So I DNF'd. Then I finished Onyx. This is book 2 in the Lux series. I gave it 4 stars. It was absolutely everything I still wanted in this series. I love the main characters. I love the will they, won't they. I love the complications that have arisen from book 1, but I don't want to spoil anything, that are definitely being looked into in book 2. It's the main theme of it. And I can't wait to see where it goes from here. Then I finished our book club book, which was Amari and the Great Game. This was book 2 in the series. I gave it 3 stars though. It disappointed me because while the writing style is great, and the characters, you do love and root for the characters, I was a little frustrated because kind of like, I hate to compare it with the Harry Potter series, but that's another middle grade that goes YA and older. And with the Harry Potter series, it was like the first couple were very young, but then you see the characters develop, you see them grow, you see the topics get more serious, you see them wising up to things. Whereas with Amari, it almost felt like she went backwards to me. This is a girl who was raised like in, I think it was South Chicago. It was definitely, not a, we'll say, bubble of Chicago. Okay. So she is a smart cookie and she knows what the streets are like. And you're telling me this girl as a tween, after going through everything she went through in the first book, is making some seriously naive mistakes. Mistakes like it's her brother's life or death on the line if she doesn't complete certain tasks and this game, if you will, which hence the title. But she has to win it by getting these rings. And you're telling me she's going to stand there, have the ring in her hand, not put it on, just hold it like this and have a monologue conversation with the bad guy and then be shocked if the bad guy happens to knock them down and get the ring and disappear. Like, are you kidding me with this? Things like that. And she kept making those same mistakes again and again. And I get it. You need to have a 3rd book and a 4th book and so on. So you can't have her completely winning. But I feel like those are the kinds of mistakes she wouldn't have made. It's the same thing as if you're telling me this kid from Chicago is going to be walking around at night with a fat wad of cash in her hand, just whistling a tune as she walks around. She's going to know not to do that. So it just kind of annoyed me. It felt like it went younger for her. It felt like she just got more naive and it annoyed me, rubbed me the wrong way. We'll get into why more in a minute in this video. I have a reason. Then I finished Happy Place. This was Emily Henry's book that I hadn't read actually yet. And with her, I'm hit or miss. There's some that I'm just meh about. And then there's Funny Story that I absolutely loved and 5-starred. This was for the Romance Book Club, the new one that started at our library. So I'm not mad at it. But I really didn't like it. I thought the characters were kind of wishy-washy. I would have loved to have seen more of their friendship dynamic delved into. I would have really loved to have heard more of the side character stories. I just didn't buy the love interest going on. I just didn't like it at all. And I really, again, didn't like the male lead. So I think that's a lesson here. If I don't like the male lead, the book's probably not going to be for me. Then I had my first 5-star. This one is a nonfiction and it's called Unmasking Autism. And guys, I have to tell you, so I was officially diagnosed as being on the autism spectrum. Sorry, I can't talk. Which actually makes so much sense now after I sat down with Dr. Lowry and talked to her about everything. It makes so much sense for how I never felt like I quite fit in. I always felt a little bit like a freak or a weirdo. And now I know I'm not. I'm just neurodivergent. And that felt so good. And it was such a huge relief for me. And it's super expensive to get tested, but if ever you're questioning why you just feel like you're a step or a beat off, or why you go to work and it actually annoys you when people are trying to interrupt what you're doing instead of just, we're at work, we should work. And why some people are just like not vibing with you and you just don't ever know why. I would recommend if you can afford it to get tested because you never know. Like we found out Katie was ADHD. We found out my husband was ADHD. I'm like, but my mind doesn't work like that. I'm like laser focused. That's why I'm able to read, 15 books at a time and just logging where I leave off on pages. And I can tell you the plot lines in my head. It's my superpower. It's my autistic superpower. So it's one of those things I would highly recommend to give you peace of mind. And so you can get some tools and tricks by reading on it for how you can kind of continue to maneuver through the world. And I'm getting all kinds of podcasts and stuff recommended, and it's wonderful. This book in particular by Dr. Devin Price is absolutely chef's kiss. They said this is kind of the gold standard if you do get diagnosed or think that you have autism, to kind of read this, to kind of, get an idea behind it and some of those tools I talked about. I told my husband I was going to put a tab and annotate and highlight any like line or page or anything that actually resonated with me. And I thought I'd have, maybe 3 or 4 because I don't usually annotate books. You guys, can I make it more clear than this? I just started crying. Whenever I started reading like 20 pages into it, I started bawling like a baby. And I woke up my husband and I said, sweetie, this is the first time in my life I feel seen. I feel like I'm not a freak. I feel like I am my own version of normal. Like what this author is writing in this book is me, is absolutely me. And it was just absolutely incredible because I had never in my life met somebody that thought like me, that worked like me, that, did things like me until I read this book. And now I get to plug into a whole new community that I do vibe with and understand. And all of you guys have always been very welcoming and loving, and I appreciate that. And there's been a lot of neurodivergence happening on my channel too. I've had a lot of people talk about being ADHD and having, their kids who are ADHD and things like that. And I love it. I absolutely love it. No wonder why we get along so well. Big warm hugs to all of you. So that's all I'm going to say about that is I recommend you picking it up. I recommend you reading it. If you have any questions, I'm always here. I'm not a doctor, but I'm always here to kind of tell you what my experience has been and see if there's any similarities. And no matter what, you're welcome here. Always, 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 always. If I sound like Pollyanna, it's because it's my nickname from the Army days. I am Pollyanna. I am what I seem like I am. And yeah, that's all. Then I finished The Traitor Queen. This I gave a 4 stars. This is book 2 in that Bridge Kingdom series. I thought it was so good. I did a vlog on this and my Finish or Forget It kind of series. So feel free to check that out. I'm not trying to shamelessly plug all my vlogs, or am I? I thought it was really good. It was very family oriented. And of course, we're trying to go through what happened when book 1 ended the way it ended. I don't want to give away any spoilers. And so we're just continuing the story with it. And I loved it. So then I naturally picked up book 3, which is The Inadequate Heir. This I gave 3 stars. I really didn't care for it as much. So apparently this book actually is supposed to take place side by side with The Traitor Queen. So very similar to the Throne of Glass series. Whenever you're reading, where is it? The Tower of Dawn. It actually can be read side by side with another one of the books earlier in this series. And that's kind of what's happening with this one. I didn't do it that way though. I read them as separate books in, order, and I was just bored. I didn't care for the characters. They were totally different characters, and it was just meh for me. So I actually, spoiler, decided not to continue with that series any further. Don't hate me. Then we had in Realmathon the Gala of Peace. This was incredible. It was such a good time. Hello, Ravens out there watching, but also hello to everybody else because we all love books here. But during the Gala of Peace, I very ambitiously said I was going to finish the Murderbot series, and I did, you guys. So here's rapid fire. I ended up finishing Artificial Condition and gave that 3 stars and didn't think it was as good as the first one. I then read Rogue Protocol, 4 stars. There's a friend that he makes and it's precious. Then I read Exit Strategy. I gave 5 stars. There's a rescue involved. This one was incredible. Mwah, chef's kiss. Loved it. Then I finished Fugitive Telemetry, 3 stars. It was like a murder mystery, but I didn't like it. I thought it was boring. Then I read Network Effect. I gave it 5 stars. We've got teenage angst and attitude, which is fabulous. We have a potential romance, and it is my favorite of the series. Then I finished System Collapse. I gave it 3 stars. We've got a new team with Murderbot here, a new mission, but it was meh for me. I kind of wish it had ended with Network Effect, honestly, because I loved it so much. That is also the biggest one at 350 odd pages, whereas the rest of them are under 200 pages. So yeah, it was a success. Lots read, lots of points earned for Team Ravens, and we all had a fabulous time. Then I finished for another vlog, my library vlog, How It All Ends. This was a graphic novel. I thought it was so cute. It was so precious. I had a good time. There wasn't anything hugely earth-shattering or in-depth with it, but it was overall very enjoyable to read. Then I finally finished Malibu Rising. This was a read-along with Kim. She finished it way before me. Can you believe it, guys? But I did finally finish it. I gave it 3 stars. It's not at all what we thought it was going to be. Both she and I were very confused by what we actually read in this, but it was okay. It was okay. I wouldn't say it was super enjoyable, but I wasn't miserable either. It was kind of that in between. Okay. Then I finished Georgie All Along. I gave this 3 stars. Kind of spoiler for tomorrow's video. This is actually the romance pick for my Happily Ever After book club for the month of April, but I finished it in March because I needed them points for them ravens. I gave it 3 stars. It was actually really cute. I enjoyed it. I would recommend it. Didn't blow me away, but it was better than the Emily Henry I read. Then I read a NetGalley, which was wonderful, and that was Ghostwriter by Julie Clark. This one has a father-daughter dynamic. The daughter is a ghostwriter, hence the title, and her father's going to be doing a memoir, so he wants her to write for him. And she goes and she's finding out some secrets from the past and more about her family. I thought it was good. I gave it 3 stars. I feel like some of the twists were just absolutely incredible. Did not see them coming. Absolutely loved it. And then some of the twists that happened, I'm like, was this necessary? And so because it kind of took me out of the story and I didn't like it as much, it dropped from a 4 to 3. But I would recommend this. I thought it was a great read, a little slow in some places, but overall, absolutely had a great time with it. Then I finally finished the only one left. I had been waiting until it came in at my library. I gave this 3 stars. This is a thriller, of course, because it's a Riley Sager, and that's what happens with Riley Sager books. Lots of twists and turns. It's a woman who's going to be taking care of a bedridden woman or young lady who is accused of having murdered her whole family. So kind of, again, like oh, come on. Lizzie Borden. There you go. I was hoping I wasn't going to have the same problem I had with the TBR game with It's a Wonderful Life and stuff. Okay, so the Lizzie Borden kind of feel to it. And of course, there are some twists and turns. There's also an earthquake kind of situation that's happening with this house falling off the cliff. And it's just all kinds of crazy stuff ensuing. But I did have an overall good time with it. I just felt like you really do kind of see that ending coming a mile away. And I would have rather it had been more of a what's happening surprise for me. Then I finished Scythe and Sparrow. I gave this 3 stars. This is book 3 in that series of Butcher and Blackbird. It had even more spice to the point where I was skipping whole chapters. So I'm sure I missed some dialogue in there. But I just wasn't into page after page after page after page of every single graphic detail you could possibly have. I just didn't want that. If I'm looking for erotica, I'll go for erotica. If I'm wanting a romance story with some, psychoticness, I'm hoping for this series. And I'm just disappointed that it's falling into that easy way out, if you will, of page filler with just this stuff in it that isn't necessary and doesn't actually further the plot at all. So sadly, I don't even know if I'll be continuing the series because this one I liked even less than the previous one, which I definitely liked a lot less than Butcher and Blackbird. So we'll have to see, but beware of the spice content in this one. Then I finished Deathless Divide. I gave this 3 stars. This is that sequel in the Dread Nation series that I've loved so much. It did not disappoint. It got a lower rating than the 5 stars I gave for Dread Nation because it drags on in a lot of places. And we have a weird kind of time hop that's happening and a weird thing with our main characters. I don't want to give anything away from book 1. It's just odd, is all I can say. It's just odd. It's not the same feel as the first one, so it gets a bit of a lower rating in my book, but still totally worth it. I'm still going to be happy having this duology on my shelves. Then I read The Thief. This I gave 3 stars, but I feel like it really should have been 2 stars after thinking about it for a while. It was just so boring. For 2/3 of the book, it is so boring. We know I'm not huge on travel scenes, and this had a lot of travel scenes, and it had stories they were telling of how the world began kind of thing, and it was just boring. It was just really, really boring, and I'm sorry to say that, but there you have it. When you get to the last third of it, it actually picks up like that, and it runs like crazy, and it is really, really good. But you need the setup, and there's no good way. I feel like they have trimmed about 100 pages in the middle. I say that, but it's really not a very thick book. But I really didn't appreciate it. If they cut that part out and there was just maybe a couple days travel and then you had the actual heist stuff happening, would have been at least a 4 star for me. But I really got bored. So take that as you will. Then I finished The Last Murder at the End of the World. I gave this 2 stars. I am so sad that I gave this 2 stars. This is one of the ones that was the top 3 that I was so looking forward to coming out that I told you guys about. And I was so excited because the premise sounds absolutely amazing. Unfortunately, it didn't deliver for me. It got very dry in places, very long and boring. I love British comedy and British dramas and things like that. This had that kind of feel for it. It felt a little bit kind of like the writing style of, why am I blanking on his name? I want to say Douglas, but I don't know that's right. But the whole Hitchhiker's Guide, it has that same kind of feel to it a little bit. And the twists really weren't good twists for me. So again, it just didn't deliver like I really wanted it to. Some people absolutely rave about it and love it. So good luck and let me know below if you've read it and what you thought of it. Then I finished The Prisoner's Throne. I gave this 3 stars. This is the last one I'm going to be reading in Elfhame. I liked the original trilogy so much more. I really just am not connecting with these characters. I really just don't care about them. And even though the title suggests somebody is in a prison, I was bored. I really didn't care what happened to the characters. So yeah, I'm done with Elfhame and I do recommend the original trilogy. Then I finished Girly Drinks. I gave this 4 stars and I'm so glad because the author, Mallory O'Mara, is actually one of the podcast hosts in Reading Glasses and I freaking love that podcast so much. And so I'm so glad I got to read this because you could totally hear her humor in it with the audiobook version, and I'm sure reading it would be the same. I loved it because it's nonfiction, but it gave me so much interesting information about how women over the ages have helped to make what are our drinks and alcohol beverages that we have to date, and things I had no idea about during Prohibition, things I didn't know about with Cleopatra. Like there's just so much packed into this little book, and I absolutely had a fabulous time because of all the humor she had in it. It wasn't dry. It didn't drag on. I thought it was absolutely fabulous, and especially the audiobook, since she reads it herself, highly recommend this one. Then I finished Deadline. I gave this 3 stars. This is book 2 in the Newsflesh series. I will be continuing this series, but I have to admit I didn't like it as much as I liked the first book, but I love me a Mira Grant, so I'm going to continue it. I love the characters, and most of the plot that happened intrigued me and kept me invested. It was just one subplot that's happening that I was like, kind of actually finding this annoying. So I'm hoping they don't continue it into the next book. Then I finished The Dragonbone Chair. I gave this 3 stars. Again, in my Broken Binding vlog, I go into way more detail, so you can feel free to watch that to see why. It just went on and on and on too long. I was really hoping it would be my new Robin Hobb replacement series. It gave me some Fitz vibes in the beginning, and I was really excited about that. And then they did some traveling, and we know how I feel about the traveling. And so it got really boring, and I just checked out, and I just didn't care anymore what happened to Simon or anybody else in that book. Then I finished Liar's Kingdom. This was another NetGalley. I appreciate all the NetGalleys. Thank you guys. I got a 4 stars on this one. It's a Cinderella retelling, but with dark fae and some twists in it, and a girl who just wants to get along and the world is not letting her get along with people, and a surprising love interest that you didn't see coming. So yeah, it was really, really a lot of fun. I highly recommend you guys pick this one up. So for the other DNFs, because if you're doing the math, it ain't mathin' yet. We're not to the 35 yet. I also DNF'd The Final Girls. This was another graphic novel in that library vlog. It just wasn't for me. More details in that vlog. I DNF'd Blankets. Has to do with child abuse. Cannot handle that anymore now that I'm a mom. I DNF North is the Night. It's just not my writing style. It's very, very pretty, but it's just not my writing style. So I would recommend it for other people to try. I just couldn't get invested. I just didn't care. We had a girl that got kidnapped, for crying out loud, and I just didn't care. Then I DNF She Who Rides the Storm. It didn't engage me. Again, it wasn't pulling me in. I don't know if it's because it's so political heavy in the beginning or what, but I wasn't pulled in. And I thought, why am I reading just to read this when there's so many books on my TBR that I need to get to? Then I DNF The Wager. This is the book club pick for March for my other book club at the library that I do, the Page Turners. It was so boring. I hear after the halfway point, it gets really good, but I was not going to invest the time in it. Again, like I said before, so many books, so little time. It was just too boring. Couldn't do it. Then I DNF'd Beasts of Prey. It was immediately sad, which made just my heart hurt, and I just wasn't in the mood for that. I wasn't super invested in any of the characters right away. And so when it just kept being sad and then sadder and then sadder, I'm like, I'm out, which is awful. I wanted to say sad again, which is actually awful because the premise sounds incredible with a magical zoo with magical creatures. I mean, that sounds absolutely amazing, but I just couldn't, guys. So I would still probably recommend that you give this a try if you're at all interested in that premise. It could be a me in this moment thing. Absolutely. And then the last one I DNF'd was Aftertaste. I got a NetGalley arc of this one as well. I'm sad to DNF these NetGalley arcs because I want to keep getting them, and I'm worried they're going to look and be like, she DNFs an awful lot of these. It just wasn't my writing style. I have to say, though, for this writing style, it is beautiful. It really, really is beautiful. But I think the integration of this more formal writing style with talking about power of you can taste what other people had eaten when you come in contact with them was just weird for me. And I just couldn't vibe with it. So I ended up DNFing it. I want to say at like 6 or 7%. So it just wasn't for me. But yeah, overall, really great reading month. I had a wonderful time at Realmathon. I can't wait for April and for you to see that crazy video tomorrow and the chaos that ensued. Try to pretend like you don't recognize any books as already having been read when I talk about them. And let me know below what your favorite book of the month was for you. For me, it was definitely Unmasking Autism. Second favorite was definitely the Murderbot books. So let me know below if you've read the Murderbots. And thank you all for being here. Please like, subscribe, send your friends, and I'll see you next time.